I'm very concerned about what bringing a huge pork processing plant into town would do to the community.
Thursday, April 21st, Mason City City Council held a 7-hour meeting to give everyone who wanted to speak out a chance to be heard. The meeting before that was 5 hours long. People from North Iowa and far from town lined up to speak out. Causing all this outcry, a pork processing plant. Prestage Farms chose Mason City as the place to build a facility. And to get a look at these numbers, 650,000 square feet, jobs for up to 2,000 people to process 10,000 pigs a day. It's those numbers that have supporters seeing green and opponents seeing red. KIMT News 3's Matt Bradley is in Studio 3 now to sort it all out for us in a special report.
Well, it's the sheer size of those numbers that have so many people on edge. For city planners, the focus is on that estimated $750 million economic impact. But there are legitimate concerns about the other issues, like transporting all those pigs. Also pollution. Prestige is currently involved in 2 lawsuits in Iowa centering on their feedlots, different types of facilities than the one proposed for Mason City, but still a reason for some to be concerned.
We don't want any pigs, do we? No pigs.
Bob Wolfram may just be one man, but he speaks for many.
I'm just not only scared for the future of Mason City, I'm scared for the future of North Iowa.
And when it comes to a pork processing plant that could change the face of the region, he doesn't like what he might see.
Because there's going to be many other things that come along. There'll be hog confinements everywhere.
Approving the project and the financial incentives required to get it is a big decision that falls on the shoulders of 6 city council members and 1 mayor. And to make their decision, they're looking at other communities that have gone through the change they might introduce in theirs. Storm Lake and Marshalltown look a bit different now than they did decades ago. Today you'll find ethnic markets throughout town and other businesses and services catering to a population that's become more diverse. Diversity that will no doubt expand to Mason City if the Prestige plant is built.
Will it come with challenges? Absolutely. Will it come with change? Absolutely. The goods always outweigh the bad.
Mark Prosser isn't shy about discussing the stereotype his city has gained since the new neighbors have come to town, working at meatpacking facilities, arriving and expanding in the last 2 decades.
Has there been tensions? Absolutely.
But he says a stereotype is all it is. Looking at crime, they've run the numbers since the 90s, making note of the ethnicity of the people they arrest. And they've found while there's more crime to go with more people, no ethnic group has emerged as being more responsible for that crime. And the percentages don't change. Crime reports show in the last decade, sex assaults have remained steady. Same with robbery, burglary, and stolen property. Vandalisms are down by 1/3, fights down by half. And they've had 3 murders total.
If a particular ethnic group or new ethnic group that they call Storm Lake home represented 10% of the community, they represented 10% of the crime.
But Prosser does want Mason City to be ready because he's found in his 27 years the job of policing will change as more people arrive who come from cultures where the police aren't to be trusted.
Folks and new arrivals, A, may not understand that, and B, may not have a comfort level to ask about it or approach somebody, so you have to go to them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Those same cultures have trouble with authority members in school, as Marshalltown school leaders have found out.
Some people come from backgrounds that school isn't important.
Marshalltown saw a similar increase in diversity in the 90s thanks to their packing plant. Now they're considered a minority-majority district.
Since the majority of our students are from minorities.
About half of the students are Hispanic, and one of their biggest challenges is getting everybody fluent in English.
We have dozens of different languages from our students that they speak at home, so we have to kind of adjust to that.
They do get more money from the state for teaching English language learners, but it's money that's badly needed because they've found it can take 6 years to get a student up to speed. And the teachers will need to do some learning, too.
These are the holidays they have. These are the customs. These are the food they eat. This is the type of food they eat. This is just to have our staff kind of learn about that because, you know, that just helps them learn more about the students they're trying to educate.
That is one investment Mason City School District would need to make with Prestige, but it's an investment Sioux City gladly makes. It's a good example of how badly a community can miss what Mason City might get.
This is who we are. This is what we're good at, you know, is farming and agriculture.
Marty Doherty is Sioux City's Economic Development Director. He's seen the boom years and the lean times that came when the John Morrell plant closed in 2010, laying off 1,300 people.
A lot of business related to that was impacted by that, along with a lot of people.
Since then, They've been nearly desperate to bring something back, and they're welcoming this new Seaboard Triumph plant with open arms. It's under construction and will be a mirror image of what's planned for Mason City. Same number of jobs, same number of hogs, nearly the same cost and incentives.
There were certainly a lot of questions about the project, but generally the community's been very supportive. Again, it's a huge economic boost. There are a lot of businesses here that were impacted when the Morel plant closed, and I think they're all very happy to see a new facility coming in.
For Mark Prosser, it's simple. Mason City should jump at the chance to get an economic engine in town. It would spur population growth, he said, stop declining school enrollment.
Certainly we would not have experienced the growth. We would not have seen the vibrancy that we see in our community. We would not have built expanding new modern schools. We would not have new apartments and townhouses going up and cutting in new residential areas like we are today and having new stores and retail. We would not have experienced that growth. The other thing we would not have experienced is what the world's really like.
But for some, no amount of data or stories of others' experiences will address all of the concerns a project of this magnitude presents.
And then what happens if the price of corn goes sky high and they can't feed these pigs? What's going to happen then?
Smell, that's probably the most common complaint that the City Council has heard since all of this began. Prestage officials have said the odor from their plant won't be anything like a person who was around older facilities years ago might expect because of new technology in a new facility. And that's also something that Marty Doherty can vouch for. He's the one from Sioux City you met in the story. He toured a modern plant in Missouri. Says he was satisfied enough to recommend that similar project for his town.
All right, thank you, Matt. And the City Council is set to vote on a development agreement on May 3rd after another public hearing.
Tonight, those for and against the development agreement that would bring a pork processing plant to Mason City will once again pack into the City Council chambers as council members prepare to cast one final vote to approve or deny the plan. But as you just heard, there are plenty and some in the community who feel approving the agreement would have a negative impact on North Iowa. Protests have been held in various locations throughout Mason City during the last several days, with one more scheduled to take place tonight outside the public library. That's where we find KIMT News 3's Matt Bradley for a preview of tonight's meeting. Matt, what can you tell us?
Well, Amy, that protest that you mentioned is being described as a news conference by the organization putting it on. I'm going to try to show you their logo here. They are calling themselves Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement. They're based out of Des Moines, and they are going to be holding a news conference at 5:30 where they lay out the case against Prestage. That will be followed at 7 o'clock by the City Council meeting this evening. And if past meetings are any indication, this is going to be a very crowded and very lengthy meeting. Public comment on this issue alone has taken up a total of about 12 hours in just the last couple weeks. And with this really being the last chance for people to sound off on this issue, they are expected to do so in great numbers. One thing to keep in mind as the vote comes down tonight, or really maybe even tomorrow morning, is that it can't end in a tie. And if it does, the mayor cannot cast the tie-breaking vote. Normally he would be the tiebreaker, but this development agreement involves too much money, so it's actually against the rules for him to be the tiebreaker. So if the vote ends in a tie, then the development agreement fails.
All right, very interesting. Thank you, Matt. We will have a link for you on KIMT.com when the meeting begins. You'll be able to stream the meeting online from there. You can find it at KIMT.com under local news.
That story is coming up, but first tonight, by now you've heard the numbers surrounding a proposed pork processing plant that will be built in Mason City. 10,000 pigs a day, 1,700 new jobs, and $750,000 in economic impact. But opposition to the project is intense. KIMT News 3's Matt Bradley is live on the scene now of a protest taking place just before tonight's City Council vote on the project. Matt?
The demonstration you see here at the Mason City Public Library got underway at 5:30 and it has been going strong ever since. By my count, 65 or 70 people have gathered here to lay out the case against Prestage. They center mostly on environmental issues, water quality, odor control, and all the side effects of all the pigs that it would take to service this plant and in raising those pigs. Now, one group that is not a part of this, though, is Mercy Medical Center North Iowa. In fact, in a letter dated April 15th to the City Council, the president and CEO expresses support for the plant and the growth that it would mean for the region. Says that he met with Prestige company leaders and was impressed with their willingness to provide full benefits, including health insurance. But to the folks here behind me and who will be speaking out tonight, there are bigger issues than that.
In the state of Iowa, we have a water crisis. We have over 725 polluted water bodies. Drinking water is constantly being threatened, and right now the kind of pollution that is happening, there seems to be no end in sight as long as we continue to invite this kind of industry into our state.
And one other big message from them tonight is that the fight is not over. Even if the City Council votes to approve the development agreement this evening, they will fight tomorrow and in the days to come.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. And we'll be updating you online throughout the evening. And of course, Matt will be at that City Council meeting, and we'll have the latest tonight at 10. 3 hours after the meeting began, there's still no vote tonight. Mason City leaders are set to take a final vote on a development with Prestige Foods to build a $240 million pork processing plant in southwestern Mason City. KIMT News 3's Matt Bradley is at tonight's meeting with an update. Matt?
Katie, that vote may be coming fairly soon. We're getting to near the end of the line of people who have lined up to speak out tonight. As anticipated, this has been a highly attended meeting. I am in the overflow area right now. About 40 people were here at the peak of the meeting, in addition to the 200 people in the main area. And they're all lining up because this is really the last chance to speak out in this type of open forum. The City Council is set to vote this evening on a development agreement with Prestige Food. They would offer financial incentives for this project. In exchange, Prestige would employ up to 1,700 people at a minimum wage of $13 an hour. And they'll send $1.4 million to Mason City schools. And they've also agreed to create no feedlots within 2.5 miles of Mason City and Clear Lake.
Of course, there are pros and cons, and you guys know the cons, and I'm glad you guys are aware of those. My point is none of you know the severity of those cons on our quality of life because of the lack of critical data and goals.
I know what it is to have a large employer, supporting a smaller town. It's very, very important that this be approved.
The irony here is that Prestige put the buffer zone into the agreement to be a good neighbor to Mason City. But if you agree to it, then Mason City becomes a bad neighbor to the rest of us.
Now, with all the people speaking out, you may wonder why there is support for the project. Well, think about it this way. The property tax evaluation of this facility alone would be 5 times the size of the current largest property taxpayer in Mason City, which is Golden Grain Energy.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And as that meeting continues, we will keep you updated on what's happening on KIMT.com. This story is on our homepage. Of course, we'll let you know as soon as that vote happens.